Hello, in this Coolgrad video, we're going to talk about studying in Alaska. Alaska is a beautiful state in the northwest part of the United States. When we think about Alaska, we mostly think about the ice, the snow, the cold, the polar bears, the whale watching, the northern lights, and stuff like that. But Alaska also has a couple of really good universities. And Indian students and other students too, international students, they do go to Alaska for higher studies. Alaska is particularly popular for petroleum engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, and even computer science, and other subjects. We're going to talk about what it's like to study in Alaska, the cost of living, the weather conditions, the places to see, the attractions there, the universities, the courses they offer, the tuition, and the kind of jobs people get after graduating from universities in Alaska. So, where is Alaska located? This is a map of the United States, and Alaska is way up here in the northwest. So each of these states has a two-letter abbreviation, and Alaska is abbreviated as AK. Sometimes people get confused. I've seen people make mistakes, like they sometimes think AL is Alaska, but AL is really Alabama, which is over here. And AR is Arkansas, and AZ is Arizona, and AK is Alaska. So remember the abbreviation. And nearly one-third of Alaska lies within the Arctic Circle. So it's way up to the north. So if you see, this is the state of Washington over here. There's Seattle and all those places over here. Microsoft, Redmond, all those places. And over here is Canada. This whole thing is Canada. And Alaska is, it starts from here and goes all the way up there. And Alaska is actually the biggest state in the United States. It's about 2 times as big as Texas. So, but a large part of it is mostly like uninhabited, and it's like a lot of snow and ice, I guess. But there are some really popular cities in Alaska. So the states neighboring Alaska. So we have Alaska here, surrounded by the ocean. And these are some of the popular cities in Alaska. So there's Anchorage over here, and there's Fairbanks up there. So we have Yukon and British Columbia of Canada to the east. So these are some of the Canadian states to the east. And the Gulf of Alaska and the Pacific Ocean to the south. So this is the Gulf of Alaska and the Pacific Ocean. And then the Bering Sea, Bering Strait, and Chugach Sea to the west. So these are, some of the oceans in the west. And you'll be surprised to know that Alaska is only about 50 miles from Russia. So usually when we see like a map of all the countries, an international map, we see, for example, Russia all the way here and then Alaska here. So we think they're like poles apart, but we forget that the world is round. So Alaska and Russia are actually so close. And we have the Arctic Ocean to the north. So it's kind of, close to the North Pole. This is a state map of Alaska. So we have the popular cities are Fairbanks, Anchorage, and we have Juneau over there, Bethel over here. So mainly the 2 popular cities are Fairbanks and Anchorage. Fairbanks is actually one of the biggest cities, and they also have international airports in both these places. And you see the Arctic Circle comes over here, and more above that is like really, really cold. So there are also a lot of islands in Alaska. So it's a very big state, and if you think about it, from Fairbanks to Anchorage, it's about 360 miles, about 6 hours. So this is like really big. That's the distance between Los Angeles and San Jose. So it's like in California. So it's like a really, really big distance. So the weather of Alaska. So in the winters, it's really, really cold. There's only ice and snow everywhere, and temperature can fall below minus 60 Fahrenheit. That's minus 51 degrees Celsius. So it can be anywhere from minus 40 to minus 60 Fahrenheit, which is a very low temperature. Believe me, even if the temperature is like 32 degrees Fahrenheit, that's like 0 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cold. But when it's like minus 30, minus 40 Fahrenheit, you can't imagine the cold unless you're really there. These are the blizzards, they blow the snow all over your face, and there's ice everywhere. If you take one wrong step, you can skid and fall. it's like it's not easy to live there for someone who's never seen snow. Most people in India probably never seen snow, and if you suddenly end up in Alaska, well, it's probably going to be difficult. Well, it happened to me. I went to grad school in Michigan, and I went there for the spring semester. Never seen snow in my life, so landed there, and all I saw was like white snow for the next 6 months. It was a very different experience, but also you have to watch every step when you walk. Sometimes there may be soft snow on top, but there may be hard, slippery ice below, which can make you slip and fall. So you have to be really careful. And summers have temperatures reaching into 90s Fahrenheit. So summers are actually warm and pleasant. So it could be anywhere from about 70 to 90 Fahrenheit. On an average, Anchorage receives about 16 inches of rainfall a year, with about 75 inches of snow. So that's a lot of snow. So that's like more than 6 feet of snow. So winters, they have only about 1 hour of daylight. So if it's dark for like 23 hours in a day, and only 1 hour of daylight, I mean, an Indian who suddenly goes there will find it really, really strange. And in summers, there's only 1 hour of night. So it's bright at daylight for 23 hours a day in summer, and only 1 hour of darkness. So it's kind of really strange, but it's a very unique experience. So even when I was in Michigan, we used to have long days in summers. Like, at 10:30 in the night, it would be bright and nice, and we would walk by the lake, and only by 11 o'clock it would get dark in summers, in the night. But in winters, by 4 o'clock it would be dark. So, in summers we have long days, and winters very short days. So that's something you'll experience as you go up north where it's really cold. So carry warm winter coats and boots and gloves and socks and all these really warm winter stuff. You may not get really good winter coats, the long coats, which are really thick and nice in India. It might be a better idea to come and buy it in the US. But remember, if you're flying to Alaska for the first time, like say from India or some other warm place, the moment you land in the airport, if it's winter, even in like say August, September, it might be slightly cold, but you can probably manage without those thick warm gloves and coat. But if you're coming for the spring semester, make sure you already have your gloves and coat and everything. Because when I landed in a cold place, I landed here sometime in December in the US for the first time in New York. And in the airport, we had to get off the plane, to take another flight to the connecting flight in airport in John F. Kennedy Airport, New York. When I got off the plane, my teeth were all like chattering. I mean, I didn't have the warm clothes or gloves or anything. I was just wearing an ordinary dress with just a pullover. But then it was really cold and I thought I was going to die. So remember, you might have to get off the airport sometimes, even in the cold. In the airport, you might have to get off the plane or something. It's not expected. Sometimes it can happen. So make sure you carry your warm clothes in your carry-on baggage. So lots of blizzards and ice. But you see beautiful northern lights. So I have a few slides about northern lights later on. So you'll see those. Between September and March is a good time to see northern lights. People travel all the way to Alaska. So they see these beautiful, colorful northern lights. And they're really nice. You can go kayaking and hiking in summers. So in summers there's nice water and you can go kayaking, and there are hiking trails and there's greenery and everything. And winters, there are a lot of winter sports like skiing, snowboarding, all kinds of amazing adventures you can have on the icy slopes. So this is the average temperature graph of Alaska. So there's it can range from anywhere about like say 20 Fahrenheit up to like say 65 Fahrenheit. Usually it can even go higher in the summers, and the coldest would be something like this. So sometimes it can go way below that. So interesting facts about Alaska. So Alaska's name, how did it get its name, Alaska? It's based on the Eskimo word Alakshak, meaning Great Lands or Peninsula. Alaska is less than 50 miles from Russia. Of the 20 highest peaks in the United States, 17 are in Alaska. Oh, that's interesting. A lot of mountains. Including the highest peak in North America, that's about more than 20,000 feet above the sea level, Denali. The average temperature for Fairbanks in the month of January is -1 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest temperature recorded in Alaska was 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Fort Yukon in 1915. Some more interesting facts about Alaska. The state of Rhode Island could fit into Alaska 425 times. So Rhode Island is a tiny state on the east coast. It's home to Brown University. It's on top of Maryland, and Rhode Island can fit into Alaska 425 times. Prudhoe Bay on the northern Alaska coast is North America's largest oil field. So it supplies a lot of oil to America. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline moves up 88,000 barrels of oil per hour on its 800-mile journey to Valdez. Oh, that's a lot of oil. So, the fishing and seafood industry is the state's largest private industry employer. Most of America's salmon, crab, halibut, and herring come from Alaska. The term Alaska Native refers to Alaska's original inhabitants, including Aleut, Eskimo, and other Indian groups. So when you're landing in Alaska, it's actually a big city like in Fairbanks and Anchorage with all the modern amenities. It's not like primitive Indian people living there in igloos or something like that. These are modernized cities, but they're probably native people living elsewhere in Alaska. Some more interesting facts. The state's coastline extends over 6,600 miles. Alaska is the United States' largest state, and it's twice the size of Texas. Measuring north to south, the state is approximately 1,400 miles long, and measuring from east to west is about 2,700 miles wide. In 1986, Mount Augustine erupted near Anchorage. So that was a volcano. Alaska's geographic center is 60 miles northwest of Mount McKinley. The Tongass National Forest is the largest national forest in U.S. 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the U.S. are located in Alaska. We already talked about that. Some more interesting facts. So, there's Mount McKinley located in Alaska's interior, one of the highest points in North America. And then the state's largest city is Anchorage, and the second largest is Fairbanks. But actually, the biggest university is located in Fairbanks. And the one in Anchorage and Juneau are really sister universities of the one in Fairbanks. The Alaska Range is the largest mountain chain in the state. It covers from the Alaska Peninsula to the Yukon Territory. In 1915, the record high temperature in Alaska was 100 degrees Fahrenheit at Fort Yukon, and the record low temperature was -80 degrees Fahrenheit, oh my god, at Prospect Creek Camp in 1971. So this was the map of Alaska revisited. So the top cities are Anchorage, Fairbanks, Juneau, and Sitka. So Fairbanks, Anchorage, Juneau is over here. The strip you see over here, that's the place for Juneau. So you remember, Seattle and Washington are way south there. So that's how you would travel to Alaska. Anchorage. So the size is about 1961 square miles. Population approximately 300,950 as of the year 2016. Anchorage is a city of U.S. state of Alaska. Alaska's most populous city, and Anchorage is actually Alaska's most populous city. Populous means the density per square mile. It's not necessarily the place with the maximum number of people, but the most populous one. And contains more than 40% of the state's total population. Among the 50 states, only New York has a higher percentage of residents who live in its most populous city. Anchorage is about 360 miles south of Fairbanks. It's a 6-hour drive easily. Fairbanks, about 120 square miles. Population, about 32,000 and out in the year 2016. Fairbanks is a home rule city and the borough seat of the Fairbanks North Star Borough in the U.S. state of Alaska. Fairbanks is the largest city in the interior region of Alaska. Fairbanks is home to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, the oldest of Alaska's current universities. So Juneau, size is 3255 square miles. Population approximately 32,000 and odd in the year 2016. Juneau is the capital city of Alaska. So remember, the capital of Alaska is not Fairbanks, not Anchorage, it's Juneau. It's the second largest city in the United States by area. The city is named after gold prospector Joe Juneau, though the place was for a time called Rockwell and then Harrisburg after Juneau's co-prospector Richard Harris. Sitka is about 4,811 square miles, population approximately 8841 in the year 2016. Sitka means people on the outside of Baranof Island. The flora and fauna of Sitka and its surrounding area are popular. Day cruises and guided day trips hiking are large enterprises in Sitka. Floatplane, flight seeing, excursions are a way to view the area's sights from above. Airports in Alaska. So Fairbanks International Airport, FAI, in Fairbanks. That's one of the most popular destinations for people traveling to Alaska. Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, Anchorage, ANC. Juneau International Airport, JNU. Ketchikan International Airport, KTN. So these are some of the smaller airports. There's Wiley Post, Will Rogers Memorial Airport, Merle Smith Airport, Dead Horse Airport, the Fort Prudhoe Bay, Dillingham Airport, Gustavus Airport, Haines Airport, Homer Airport, Hoona Airport. These are places that lead to the smaller interior parts of Alaska. So the airports in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau are Alaska's primary ports of entry. Anchorage is Alaska's largest city, and Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport is the largest and most heavily trafficked airport in the state. Fairbanks is Alaska's second largest city and the chief transportation hub in the interior region. Visitors can fly in and out of Fairbanks International Airport to destinations worldwide. Juneau is Alaska's capital city located in the Inside Passage. The coastal communities of southeast Alaska are accessible via Juneau International Airport. Jet service is also available from Seattle to the Inside Passage community of the Ketchikan. So jet flights from Seattle take about 2.5 hours to reach Juneau and about 3.5 to 4 hours to Anchorage and Fairbanks. So from Seattle, usually if you're flying from India, you might have a layover in Seattle or maybe like in some place in Canada. So from Seattle, or even sometimes you might fly from somewhere down south, like say Los Angeles or maybe San Francisco, I don't know. But most popular layover place is Seattle. So from Seattle to Anchorage or Fairbanks is about 3.5 to 4 hours. And to Juneau is about 2.5 hours. So most people will be flying to Fairbanks if they're going to university. That's about a 3.5 4 hour flight from Seattle. Alaska Airlines typically offers the most availability for travel to and within Alaska and has partnerships with several smaller carriers. Top universities in Alaska: University of Alaska Anchorage, University of Alaska Fairbanks, and University of Alaska Southeast. So University of Alaska Fairbanks is really the most popular and biggest university, and these two are like sister university institutions of the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Alaska Pacific University is another small university. So the University of Alaska Fairbanks. This university, UAF, was established in 1917 as the Alaska Agricultural College and School of Mines. But its origins lie in the creation of a federal agricultural experiment station in Fairbanks in 1906. So this is more than a century old. The station set the tone for the strongly research-oriented university that developed later. In the spring of 1915, the U.S. Congress approved legislation that reserved about 2,250 acres of land for a campus around the research station. It also allowed the federal government to give the college land that had been surveyed and unclaimed in the Tanana Valley. The proceeds from the sale and development were supposed to help fund the operation of the college. So this is a little bit about the history of Alaska Fairbanks. Well, the key takeaway from here is that it's more than a century old. It's evolved over the years. So the campus, it's more than 2,250 acres. Number of buildings, 28. And quick facts, Fairbanks was named by city founder E.T. Barnett in honor of Senator Charles W. Fairbanks of Indiana, who would go on to serve as Teddy Roosevelt's vice president. First years direct from high school, about 72.2, so a lot of, this is some statistics about the undergrad. And from Alaska we have about this many people, and from outside Alaska about this many people. And then acceptance rate at the university is about 74.5%. So there's a very high acceptance rate because they get a very few applications, right? Not too many people in India would prefer Alaska as the #1 destination to study. So very few people apply there, but among those who apply, most of them do get admission. So annual tuition is about $18,000 for non-resident grad students. So the top employers. So for people who graduate from Alaska, whether it's from petroleum engineering or mechanical or chemical or computer science or electrical or even business school sometimes. So top employers are British Petroleum, Jacobs, ConocoPhillips, Halliburton, etc. So these companies even come to Fairbanks for campus recruitment. They come to the campus. Starting salary. So for petroleum engineering, if you graduate from University of Alaska Fairbanks, it's actually a very popular destination. You can make a six-figure income, about $107,000 per annum, which is a good amount of money. Electrical engineering, about almost $70,000 per annum, starting salary. Computer engineering, about $65,300 per annum. Mechanical engineering, $60,200. Civil engineering, $58,000. MBA, about $60,000. University of Alaska Fairbanks facts. So, University of Alaska Anchorage and UA Southeast are sister universities of UAF. Top rated for petroleum engineering, students apply to mechanical and chemical engineering too. Now here's an interesting fact. So Fairbanks is a sister city of Pune in India. So if you're from Pune, you pay an in-state tuition fee. And you'll also find lots of students at Alaska Fairbanks from Pune, because it's one of the sister cities of Fairbanks in Alaska. Now that's interesting, right? So I just spoke to one girl who was who graduated with a degree in petroleum engineering from Alaska, and she was kind enough to give me a lot of information. And she said she was surprised that she met a lot of people from Pune, and then she discovered it's because Pune and Fairbanks have this arrangement. You know, they're like twin cities or something like that. So if you have a driving license from Pune and a passport that was issued in Pune, like if you're born there or something like that, okay? So then if you go to Fairbanks, Alaska, you would pay only the in-state tuition and not the out-of-state tuition. Isn't that kind of interesting? But if you have a scholarship and teaching assistantship, then you probably won't pay any tuition at all. And funding was easily available as of the year 2016 from what I got from the students who just graduated there. Very few students apply. Most of them have scholarships, and you know, they have teaching or research assistantships. So they get some kind of support from the university to meet their living expenses, and a lot of them get, you know, partial or full, you know, tuition waiver too. Working on campus, you make about $11 to $12 per hour. You can still meet your living expenses. So department rankings. All these departments, engineering, business school, they're all ranked lower than 100. So it's not like in the top 100 in the United States. But if you want a low-cost education at a reasonably good university, and if you want to see something, if you want to stay away from the, you know, humdrum, like the busy city life, you want to be in a remote place, Alaska might be a good place. Fairbanks Business School. So this is the business school building. So this is the computer engineering building. This is the civil engineering building. And this is the electrical engineering department building. So you see, it's a very big campus and big buildings, big beautiful buildings. In summer you'll see a lot of greenery, grass, trees and all these things. But in winter you'll only see white snow everywhere. So places to visit near the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So there's the Running Reindeer Ranch, there's the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, University of Alaska Museum of the North, Nature and Wildlife Tours. Indian restaurants in Fairbanks. No Indian restaurants or grocery stores in Fairbanks. So even though it's a big city, surprisingly there are no Indian restaurants as of the year 2016, and no particular, you know, specific Indian grocery store. So you can get some spices and you know, some kind of masalas and stuff probably in spices and all these cooking ingredients in chain stores like maybe Walmart, Safeway, or the equivalent of that. But the nearest Indian restaurants are in Anchorage, which is 360 miles away, 6 hours down south. So, and there's an Indian grocery store in Anchorage too. So if you're planning to go to Alaska Fairbanks, you better carry some spices from home in India, or you better have some people ship it to you, because you won't have an Indian grocery store or Indian restaurants out there. And you better carry some instant mixes like MTR or Soy Magic, so if you feel like eating any food, you can make it at home and eat. And I believe there's a good Indian community, from what I heard. Small, but really well-knit and supportive Indian community in Fairbanks, Alaska, where people help each other. There may be about 40-50 people there, or maybe like about, let's say about 20 to 30 students and a few families. There are some Indian faculty members and others too living there. There may be like, a few families, but they're well-knit and they support each other, from what I hear. You can get basic food items at, these American stores. Cost of living near, University of Alaska Fairbanks. Monthly rent in Fairbanks as of year 2016 for a studio is $500 to $800. Apartment, one-bedroom apartment, about $850 to $1,100 per month. Two-bedroom apartment is $1,100 to $1,600. And then one-bed, one-bath house, approximately, if you're planning to purchase, it would cost you about $100,000, probably less than that. Probably about $50,000 to about, $200,000 for a one-bed, one-bath house, maybe even less than that if you want to buy a house. If you're planning to buy a three-bed, three-bath house, approximately $150,000 to $550,000. And if you're planning to buy a really big five-bed, five-bath house, it would probably cost about $400,000 to $700,000. It could be even more, depending on the facilities and amenities. So let's now talk about the University of Alaska, Anchorage. University of Alaska, Anchorage traces its origins back to 1954, 5 years before Alaska became the 49th U.S. state. That year, Anchorage Community College, ACC, was founded and began offering evening classes to 414 students at the Elmendorf Air Force Base. So, college-level courses were offered in the Anchorage area for the first time. And then, in 1962, ACC, along with other community colleges around the state, was incorporated into the University of Alaska statewide system. 5 years later, ACC began offering both day and evening classes. ACC provided academic study for associate degrees the first 2 years of work towards baccalaureate degrees. University of Alaska, Anchorage. So all the departments are ranked lower than 100. None of them are in the top 100. So this is the business school. So this is the computer science department. This is the civil engineering department. This is the chemical engineering department. Places to visit near the University of Alaska, Anchorage. So there are a lot of wildlife tours, there are museums. We're going to talk about the places to visit later on, so I'm not going to delve too much into detail. So the Indian restaurants near University of Alaska and Anchorage. So there's Namaste Shangri-La, there's Indian Tess. So there are at least a couple of restaurants. Cost of living in Anchorage. So monthly rent as of the year 2016 for a studio about $600 to $900 per month. For a one-bedroom apartment about $1,000 to $1,600 per month. For a two-bedroom apartment approximately $1,400 to $2,400 per month. So if you're planning to buy a one-bed, one-bath house or a condo, it would cost you about $30,000 to $100,000. And to buy a three-bed, three-bath house in Anchorage, approximately $150,000 to $350,000. A five-bed, five-bath house would cost about $350,000 to $700,000. University of Alaska, Southeast. So this one is located in Juneau. So it was established in 1987, quite recent, with the restructuring and consolidation of the former University of Alaska Juneau, Ketchikan Community College and the Islands Community College. So they all consolidated and became the University of Alaska Southeast. The UAS is accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities. So all the departments are again ranked below 100. But for people who grew up there, or for people who somehow want to go to Alaska for whatever reason, it might be a good place. But remember, the University of Alaska Fairbanks is really good for petroleum engineering and mechanical, chemical, and even electrical. They do get good jobs after that in places like British Petroleum and in all these places. Petroleum engineering, two of the most popular cities are like Houston, Texas, where there's a lot of oil fields, and then there's Alaska. So the UAS Business School, this is the picture of the business school. This is the computer science department. This is the electrical engineering department. And now we're going to talk about places to visit in Alaska. This is interesting. So there's Denali, there's the Kenai Fjords National Park. You know what, I'm not going to go over this entire list here because we're going to elaborate on each of these. There are slides that talk about each of these places to visit. Okay, let's take a look at what you can get to see in Alaska. Northern Lights. Most people travel to Alaska mainly to see the Northern Lights. The beautiful, colorful skies that, brighten the sky in the nights for many months, mostly from September to March, and even after that. So the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, can be seen at an average of 243 days a year in Fairbanks. Wow, that's a lot of time to see Northern Lights. Now, the Northern Lights are produced by charged electrons and protons striking the Earth's upper atmosphere. Beautiful colors across the horizon. So this is what the sky would look like, colorful and nice. Isn't that like lovely? Imagine you're living there and walking there in the mountains and the sky is all colorful, red and green and with the stars. Oh my God. I haven't seen this in real life myself, but I really want to see it sometime. Wow, look at this. There's a picture of a girl with all the colorful Northern Lights in the background. Oh my God. Maybe that's one reason why people would want to study in Alaska. Apart from the fact that it's highly rated for petroleum engineering. So next thing is whale watching. A lot of people take cruises and vacations to Alaska mainly to see the whales. So it costs about $100 to $200 per head, I guess, depending on the packages. So you'll be going in a big ferry or a boat or a ship like this, and all these whales will be jumping up and down, Whales are vegetarian, even though they're the biggest animals in the ocean. They eat only plankton and they're kind of harmless. Even the killer whales, the shamus that perform in SeaWorld in San Diego and Orlando, those are called killer whales, but it's really a misnomer. They're supposed to be really friendly. And the few times the killer whales have attacked their trainers is because they're trying to play with them. They didn't really mean to harm them. So killer whales even are not dangerous. Well, of course, if you put your hand in his mouth, you might get swallowed or something. I wouldn't mess with them. They're huge, powerful creatures, but they're known to be really friendly and they can even be trained. So they're not like dangerous, like polar bears or something. So you'll see the whales jumping up and down. So these whales, even though they're at the bottom of the ocean, they come up every few hours to breathe because they need oxygen from the air. So whale watching. So where is the good place for whale watching? Whale watching trips feature gray whale, orcas, killer whales, humpback whales and the beluga whales, the different types of whales. Southeast Alaska yacht charters normally have less than 100 passengers per voyage, are based out of Seattle and Vancouver in British Columbia and Canada. So from there you could go on a cruise and watch whales. And if you're already living in Alaska, like in Anchorage or some other places, there are local whale watching tours. Resurrection Bay in Seward, the many bays of Kodiak, Alaska, Whittier and Prince William Sound, and then Glacier Bay, Icy Strait, and the Inside Passage around Juneau, Alaska. These are some of the hot spots for Alaska whale watching trips. So if you're planning to go whale watching, you'd probably look it up on the internet. There are a lot of companies that offer tours. Every spring, gray whales migrate through the waters of Alaska to the grounds in Bering and the Chugach Seas. Combo family trips. In spring, there are day trips that offer gray whale watching combined with marine life and glacier tours in Kenai Fjords National Park and near Seward. During the early spring, you're likely to see gray whales on their annual migration north to the rich, feeding and calving grounds of the Arctic Ocean. So when is a good time for whale watching? Spring or summer? In summer progresses, frequent Observations of humpback, mink, and orcas, killer whales, are present throughout the waters of coastal Alaska. So now let's talk about Denali. So Denali is like one of the highest mountains in the US. So you go there to see the sheer beauty of this mountain, and there's a lot of fun activities up there. So there's a Denali National Park and Preserve, encompasses about 6 million acres of Alaska's interior wilderness. Its centerpiece is about this huge 20,000 foot high Denali, is also known as the formerly known as Mount McKinley. Okay, they're really the same thing. North America's tallest peak. With terrain of tundra, spruce forest, and glaciers, the park is home to wildlife including grizzly bears, wolves, moose, caribou, and sheep. Popular means of exploration are biking, backpacking, hiking on maintained trails, or in backcountry. So a lot of really amazing things to do in summer and in winters. Kenai Fjords National Park. So this is these are some of the pictures of this beautiful national park. So the Kenai Fjords National Park is the national park established in 1980 by the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act. Park covers an area of about 669,984 acres on the Kenai Peninsula in south-central Alaska near the town of Seward. The park contains the Harding Ice Field, one of the largest ice fields in the United States. The park is named for the numerous forts carved by glaciers blowing down the mountains from the ice field. The field is a source of at least 38 glaciers, largest of which is Bear Glacier. So, Mendenhall Glacier. Wow, this is a nice place. I mean, I would be afraid to be there by myself, but there are groups that go, mountain climbing, and, go there for winter adventures, and, a lot of winter sports and things like that. So the Mendenhall Glacier is a glacier about 13.6 miles long, located in the Mendenhall Valley, about 12 miles from downtown Juneau in the southeast area of the U.S. state of Alaska. The glacier and surrounding landscape is protected as part of this 5,815-acre Mendenhall Glacier Recreation Center, federally designated unit of the Tongass National Forest. Anchorage Museum. So this is the museum. It's got a lot of interesting artifacts and in Anchorage. So it's a large art history, ethnography, ecology, and science museum located in a modern building in the heart of Anchorage, Alaska. It's dedicated to studying and exploring the land, peoples, art, and history of Alaska. The museum displays material from its permanent collection along with regular visiting exhibitions. Native Heritage Center. So this is an interesting place. Talks a lot about Native Indian arts and crafts and heritage. So Alaska Native Heritage Center is an educational and cultural institution for all Alaskans located in Anchorage, Alaska. The center opened in 1999. The Alaska Native Heritage Center shares the heritage of Alaska's 11 major cultural groups. Those 11 groups are the Athabaskan people, the Yak people, Tlingit people, the Haida people, Tsimshian people, Unangax people, Alutiiq people, Yupik, Cupik, Siberian Yupik, and all these people. Alaska's SeaLife Center. So there's all these wonderful sea animals that you can look at. The Alaska SeaLife Center is Alaska's premier public aquarium and Alaska's only permanent marine mammal rehabilitation facility, located on the shores of the Resurrection Bay in Seward in the U.S. state of Alaska. Open since May 1998, it's dedicated to understanding and maintaining the integrity of the marine ecosystem of Alaska through research, rehabilitation, conservation, and public education. It's the only facility in the world specifically dedicated to studying the northern marine environment and the only one designated at the outset to combine research with public education and visitor component. Chugach State Park. So this is the state park. Covers about 495,000 acres and immediately east of the Anchorage Bowl in south central Alaska. Though primarily in the municipality of Anchorage, a small portion of the park north of the Eklutna Lake area in the vicinity of Pioneer Peak lies within the Matanuska-Susitna Borough. Established by legislation signed into law in 1970 by Alaska Governor Keith Miller, the state park was created to provide recreational opportunities, protect the scenic value of the Chugach Mountains, and the other geographic features, and to ensure the safety of the water supply for Anchorage. Alaska Zoo. So that's surely going to have a lot of polar bears, I'm sure. And it's a zoo located in Anchorage on 25 acres. The Anchorage hillside. It's a popular attraction in Alaska with nearly 200,000 visitors per year. The zoo is currently home to more than 100 birds and mammals representing 50 species. The zoo has the widest variety of animals native to the state of Alaska, as well as some exotics such as emu tigers, Bactrian camels, and yaks. Yeah, you'll find a lot of unique animals. I've had friends who went to Alaska mainly for whale watching to see the northern lights, and they also made a stop at the zoo and they really liked it. So, Tracy Arm, so it's another place. Tracy Arm is a fort in Alaska near Juneau. It is named after the Secretary of the Navy, Benjamin Franklin Tracy. It's located about 45 miles south of Juneau and 70 miles north of Petersburg, Alaska, off of Holcomb Bay and adjacent to Stephens Passage with the Tongass National Forest. So Tracy Arm is the heart of the Tracy Arm Fjords Terror Wilderness, designated by the United States Congress in 1980. Tongass National Forest. The Tongass National Forest in southeast Alaska is the largest national forest in the U.S., about 17 million acres. Most of its area is part of the temperate rainforest, so the WWF ecoregion, so World Wildlife Fund. It's part of the larger Pacific temperate rainforest, WWF ecoregion, and is remote enough to be home to many species of endangered and rare flora and fauna. The Tongass, which is managed by the United States Forest Service, encompasses islands of the Alexandra Archipelago, fjords and glaciers, and peaks of the coast mountains. So it has an international border with Canada. British Columbia runs along the crest of the boundary ranges of the coast mountains. So in this national forest, you will see the boundary with Canada. Alaska Aviation Heritage Museum. So this is another interesting museum which has a lot of information about how aviation evolved, and they have models of actual flights that were used and things like that. So the Alaska Aviation Museum is located on Lake Hood Seaplane Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Its mission since 1988 is to preserve, display, and honor Alaska's aviation heritage, and preserving and displaying the museum has over 30 aircraft on display, a restoration hangar, flight simulators, 2 theaters, and a Hall of Fame. It provides emphasis on historic aircraft, aviation aircrafts, and memorabilia that contributed to the development and progress of aviation in Alaska, including bush flying and the World War II Army base on Adak Island. So the Portage Glacier. So this is another glacier. So you'll see a lot of really snow-capped, beautiful mountains and glaciers in Alaska. Portage Glacier is a glacier on the Kenai Peninsula of the U.S. state of Alaska, included within the Chugach National Forest. It is located south of Portage Lake and 6 kilometers or 4 miles west of Whittier. Portage Glacier was a local name first recorded in 1898 by Thomas Corbin Mendenhall of the U.S. So, hundreds of years ago, the glacier filled the entire Portage Valley, a distance of about 14 miles, and was connected to what are now 5 separate glaciers. Alaska Botanical Gardens. So these are beautiful botanical gardens with also some wildlife in it, I guess. The Alaska Botanical Garden is a 110-acre botanical garden located at 4601 Campbell Airstrip Road, Anchorage, Alaska, USA. It is an independent non-profit organization which opened in 1993 and is open year-round and charges admission to support its mission. The mission of the garden is to enhance the beauty and value of plant material through education, preservation, recreation, and research. Alaska Rainforest Sanctuary. So, this is one of the rainforest sanctuaries. It's a 40-acre rainforest reserve. Includes tall stands of spruce, hemlock, and cedar trees, with the forest floor saturated with mosses, wildflowers, and a variety of berries. The sanctuary is located at the picturesque Herring Cove, only 8 road miles from Ketchikan. On-site experiences include walking an easily accessible half-mile trail in the Tongass, visiting the Alaska Raptor Center's aviary exhibits, these birds, watching a native master totem pole carver at work, and visiting a historic Alaska sawmill. Now that's interesting. The Alaska Rainforest Sanctuary is a unique Alaska experience, perfect for the nature lover. So there's also an Indian temple in Alaska. There's a Ganesh Mandir of Anchorage. So this building has got a nice Ganesh temple. And there's Indian community, they have festivals, they observe prayers, rituals in Anchorage. So this brings us to the end of the slide about, studying in Alaska. So as you see, Alaska is not just about ice and snow and boring stuff. There's a lot of exciting things you can do in Alaska. The northern lights especially are beautiful, and the university is actually supposed to be really good, as I've said before, for petroleum engineering and even mechanical and electrical engineering, or even chemical engineering. So although Alaska is not really one of the most preferred destinations for students, Indian students who are going abroad, it's certainly not comparable to like MIT or Harvard or even to like San Jose State University, for example. But my point is, for some particular courses, they do get good jobs after graduating from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they have a nice little world of their own out there. People who like it quiet and who like the cold, the snow, I think they're happy to be there. So this brings us to the end of this video about studying in Alaska, and I hope you found it useful. Thank you.